Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, December 5th, 2022 Select Board meeting. I'm Rich Mucci, Chair of the Winchester Select Board. I'm joined this evening by my Vice Chair, Anthea Brady, Mariana Guluboff, John Fallon, Michael Betancourt, and Acting Town Manager Beth Rudolph. We have a jam-packed agenda tonight. The room is full, first time in a while, so it's good to see everyone. Thanks for coming out. I'm going to take things out of order a little bit just to get people in and out because we do have some stuff that's going to take a little longer. I'm going to start with the Manchester Field Gift in Kind. So I saw Gary walk in. Gary, why don't you come on up? Get you out of the way first. Thanks for coming down. We appreciate it.
Good evening. Thank you.
So Gary, tell us a little bit about the project is over at this point down at the Manchester courts.
It is. So last December, I think we met for the first time with the select board, and we raised the funds, and with the assistance of the engineering department, DPW, building inspectors and so forth, school committee, and yourselves, we completed the physical development of the courts, resealed them, put up new hoops, and I think we've seen all kinds of activity there for the past few months, which has been great. And so I think we're at the point where my understanding is that the building inspector has cleared it and is good with what we've done there. And so we just wanted to formally gift in kind the work that's been done there to the town of Winchester, and in the name of Bob Bigelow as well.
Yeah, it was great. We had the dedication, and it was great to see all the old friends of Bob speak about him, and it was a great event. And then the stone came in, and the plaque came in, and everything, and it looks fantastic down there. I know, as a active 12-year-old basketball player with my son, I know they're down there all the time playing with their middle school friends. So it's become a great asset to the town already. So. From where I sit, I appreciate everything that your group did to raise those funds and redo those courts in the name of Bob, who I think would be very impressed and really enjoy the fact that we have that facility in town for the kids just to play, right? So it's been a great asset. Beth, I assume everything is in order on the town side?
It is, and I just want to commend you guys for, I know it's kind of a tedious process to do these types of projects with town and non-town property, and you were wonderful every step of the way, so I really want to commend you and the folks you worked with on this.
One of the side benefits, and I'm not sure what the curriculum is in the Winchester Public Schools, but I teach in Sudbury, and so I teach civics. And one of the things we do now each year is we work on a project with our students, and so I've taken this as my personal project, so with a few YouTube recordings to show them what this could be like. And the message has always been, if you work on something you care about, you can make good things happen. Start local and so forth. My pal Doug Miller is not here. He's the empty chair, and I know that Mr. Gill was waiting for Doug to come on. And,
yeah, Mr. Chairman, we can't, from the DPW, we can't accept this gift right now. When this went out the contract, Doug Miller, who played basketball at high school and then went on to play at Harvard, I asked him, we'll consider this done when you can get 5 3-pointers. Well, Gary had to do it, and Gary got the 5 3-pointers. So it took Gary a few times.
I'm taking them inside.
That's great. Any other project? Thanks, Jay. Any other board members? Mike, you want to say something?
Just want to say thank you to you and Doug and the team. It really is an ideal project from the town's perspective, and you can see that with the smiles on the kids' faces that are out there immediately after it opened. Right, it was almost like overnight. Everything was done and everyone was out there, and it's nice as well to see Bob honored that way. I know Rich was at the ceremony as well, but also a scholarship that's part of the fundraising that you guys did in honor of Bob, which I think is really meaningful as well. So it's really a great outcome for the town, and really a great way to honor Bob. So thank you again, appreciate it.
Thank you for referencing that. We've worked with the Winchester Scholarship Foundation, and we're looking forward to seeing Winchester kids graduating and benefiting from the monies that were raised there.
Any other board members? You have the second annual Bob Bigelow term. I think it's December 28th and 29th?
Starts on the 28th, yeah.
Yep.
And I believe Bob's number will be retired that night, and we anticipate family being there as well. So Nancy and the kids, I think, will will be on hand. So postponed a year from given COVID and all that
Yep.
stuff, but this year it should go off.
I'm glad that tradition's carrying on, and it should be a great event. And also, I know you're head of the WBA, and I just want to thank you as well. You know, I was talking to our rec director, Nick. You don't come down here very often, so I got to thank you here. Which is probably a good thing. You know, my understanding is there's 700 kids signed up for the rec basketball program this year, which is a phenomenal number. It's going through preschool all the way through 8th grade, I believe. So, you know, it's a great partnership that you, WBA and the rec department got together this year and did, and certainly a model for the other organizations in town and how to work with our rec department and really, you know, make sports, you know, about the fun, you know, teach a kid a sport, and, you know, it's just great to see. I mean, 700 kids is huge, and I know we keep them busy up there. So thank you for that, and thank you for running the coaches clinic last week on Saturday for us coaches that, you know, may need a little tune-up on how to actually coach the game.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rich.
Thanks. All right, with that, do you want to vote to accept the gifts? So,
Yeah,
motion.
do we, where was the gift specifically from? Is it?
It's from the Winchester Basketball
Winchester
Association.
Okay. I move we accept with gratitude the in-kind, gift in kind for the Manchester field basketball courts from the Winchester Basketball Association.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thanks, Gary.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good season.
Happy holidays.
You too. All right, next up, we're gonna do the joint meeting of the Board of Assessors and the Select Board, so I'd ask, any of our Board of Assessors, come on up, guys. Yep, just one, yep, and we're gonna open the meeting, so, I'll open this joint meeting of the Winchester Select Board and the Board of Assessors. We have Mr. Manganaro and Mr. Mackenzie joining us. Thank you guys for coming down.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us.
We're here to consider two candidates for a vacancy. So if it's okay with you, Mr. Manganaro, I will call up each candidate to give an interview.
Sounds like a good procedure, thank you.
Okay. So we'll start with Miss, is it Bandar?
Yes.
Come on up. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. We had the benefit of getting your resume and your cover letter. Happy to hear, you know, if you want to tell us anything about yourself and why you want to be on the Board of Assessors.
Sure. So, as you said, my name is Juana Bandar. I've been a resident of Winchester since 2018. I have two daughters in the Winchester Public School Systems. They're at BO and loving it. And I've had a long career, like approximately over 17 years in the finance industry, working on the investment side, actually interestingly on the municipal tax exempt investment side. So I know some about the municipal finance and budgets on the investment side, not so much from the operation side. And I have an interest in learning more about it, as I have an interest in kind of contributing to my community. So that's what motivated me to volunteer.
Questions from any
Well,
members?
I would just like to thank you for stepping up and volunteering yourself. I think it's very commendable. Your credentials are obviously outstanding, almost to a point where I thought, what does she want to join us for? But appreciate it because we need more people like you to volunteer for different positions around town.
Of course, yeah, more than happy to.
I'd just like to follow up too. We usually meet in the mornings. We're flexible. Any conflict with like an 8 a.m. meeting time?
Just to drop off my kids at school.
Okay.
That's basically it.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Very good. Other questions? So, Ms. Banner, I'll just ask, so I don't know how much you know about the Board of Assessors, but do you know it's an elected position? So this would be filling it until the March election, right?
Yes.
March of this year, so 3 months. And then you would need to, if you wanted to run, you would have to pull papers in the next couple of weeks, I believe, for that election.
It's
January.
January, right? Usually,
January?
usually it's beginning of January, although it is early election.
It's earlier this year. It's
but
March
yeah.
18th is the election, so
Oh,
I don't
Yeah,
know.
you have to
So
pull
I'll have to
papers
think of- yeah.
and get 60 signatures and then run.
So I just wanted to make sure you understood that
Okay,
about the
yeah.
position.
Yep, did.
You've got tremendous financial background. Have you ever thought about, very impressive. Did you ever think of being on the finance committee?
You know, the only, I would say the primary reason why I'm even able to be in this position is that I've actually resigned recently from my private, from my corporate job, and just to be more, with my children, more on a full-time basis. And so I do have the additional time ability to be able to volunteer for things like this and to be more involved. So that's potentially something that I could be interested in the future.
Okay. Any other questions by anybody? This is the only way I asked. I know there's 2 openings on the finance committee as well, and with your background, it might be, certainly your knowledge would be welcome on that,
Okay.
on that committee.
I'll definitely consider it.
I don't know if you could do both. I don't think you could, but,
FinCom, you can't
yeah,
do something else.
definitely else. You have to
The
do one or the
restriction
other.
is on finance committee,
Yeah.
that you can't do something else.
So, just why I brought it up.
Okay.
All right, hearing nothing else, we'll hear from the other candidate, and then we'll deliberate. Thank you.
Thank you.
George, Mr. Nell, want to come on up? I feel like you were just here.
I know, you guys get sick of me.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in this position?
I'm George Nowell Jr. I'm from Precinct 2. I've lived in Winchester over 50 years, and I've probably worked in town for almost that long. Been a town meeting member for, I don't know, I think 20 years, but I lost count, to be honest with you. Kind of seems like one big, long meeting now. I've also served on the Committee of Names, Transfer Station Working Group. So as I've grown older, I've certainly come to appreciate, social and civic volunteerism, and, I see what you guys do every day and the time and energy that you guys commit. And, that's sort of why I was volunteering for this, just to kind of give back to the community.
Great. Questions from board members? Or Board of Assessors?
Like I said, we reviewed both applicants, and as I stated before, George, thank you very much for what you've done for the community and your willingness to step up here. My question would be, how do you see the experience you have in town and with your business, how do you see that benefiting the Board of Assessors?
Well, I think it kind of plays into some of my, I don't know, I guess unique strengths. Having worked in town for so long, and some of the things that I've come across, I think I know every street in town, literally every street in town. And I probably have been, I don't know, it says an estimate here, but I have a feeling I've been in over 65% of the properties in Winchester, or on 65% of the properties in Winchester in various capacities. So I'm not sure those things come into play a whole lot, but this is one of the few things where I think it actually might help me.
That leads me to my next question. Are you robbing these properties, or do you have a moving company or something?
I have a furniture moving
Oh,
company
okay, geez,
and a
thanks.
waste removal
I thought I was
company.
just creeping on them.
No. I'm
Okay,
sorry, I should
that
have
explains.
preferenced those comments.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to respond to that question. Really?
You were thinking it, I just asked it. No, and I've known George for a while too, and he's a little underestimating or understating his commitment to the community. He volunteered many years for youth sports too, as well as being the captain of the '86 Super Bowl team in town. So I think we have 2 fine candidates here, and appreciate both of them applying.
Questions, any other questions for Mr. Nell? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Step back. All right, I'll open it up to discussion. Anybody wants to start the discussion? I mean, I guess I have an initial question for maybe either one of you. Do you see a benefit of having a business owner, a small business owner from town on the Board of Assessors?
It doesn't hurt. Does it make a huge difference? I think the experience with the knowledge of properties and stuff, and I know George has several family members that own homes in town too, and obviously my history with George, comfortable with his his commitment, his work ethic, and his seriousness that he put towards, not saying that the other candidate didn't, but I'm hoping we maybe can get a 2-for-1 deal here. Like you said, I'm not nothing against me and Rich, but this other candidate seems very, very qualified for maybe a higher position, you know? But that being said, I think we would just like to have 2 good candidates.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in that regard, that we do have 2 candidates that are very qualified. I guess of what I know about George is that he's made a huge commitment to the community. And so I think he has dedicated himself to this town. And obviously the other candidate has a great deal of experience in the financial sector, so perhaps we could encourage her to consider the Finance Committee. And I guess if I have to choose between one of the 2 candidates, I'd probably vote in favor of George just because of my familiarity with him, so.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, it's great to have 2 great candidates for this interim position. And as you said, Rich, it's a short turnaround here, so certainly either one can make a decision about the 3-year position soon over the next couple months. And I think it's nice to see some new faces also in town government. So, I would, pending board discussion, move that we appoint Ms. Bondar to the interim position of the Board of Assessors. So, but certainly I can wait for that motion until.
Is it okay to ask another question of the candidates, or is that time passed? I wonder if they're both willing to vote, to run for the 3-year term, because if not, then we just have them for a few months and we're doing it all over again.
I mean, I don't think we need to put somebody on the spot. No, so I just make sure they understand. I mean, I asked to make sure that they understood that there was an election, that this was an elected. It's not an appointed position. So,
Yeah, so I agree with Mike. I think, I mean, I've worked with George on committees that he's volunteered, most recently the transfer station committee, and he does a great job, and he volunteers in town. At the same time, I think it's good to see somebody new that we haven't seen, and with these, I mean, honestly, incredible qualifications for the position. So I would agree that I think we should appoint Ms. Bandar to the position.
other thoughts? Anyone else?
I agree with that. I think it's an exceptional background, and to sort of be able to introduce that to your board might be a real asset to the group. I know it's a short term between, it's probably 3.5 months, if that, at this point. But it is great to see new people getting involved in the volunteer positions in Winchester.
Anybody else? All right. Hearing nobody else, I would entertain a motion for,
I'll second Mike's motion.
okay,
Is there another motion, or do we just vote off of that motion?
so we would vote off that motion,
Okay.
and then we would consider other motions if we had to. So the motion is to appoint Ms. Bandar to the Board of Assessors position. Okay, so roll call vote. So I would go with Paul,
No.
Rich,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear Mike's motion, if you could just.
to appoint Ms. Bandar to the Board of Assessors. Appoint Ms. Bandar to the Board of Assessors.
And I'll vote no as well.
John,
No.
Mariano,
Yes.
Anthea,
Yes?
Mike,
Yes.
and I will vote yes with my colleagues. So we'll appoint Ms. Bandar to the board, so congratulations. And we will, it'll be a short term, but, go there. All right.
Thank you.
Just come in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right. At this point, we have 2 license hearings. I'm going to open those up. So the first one I'm going to do is the second one, which is the transfer of the common vicular application from Gloria's Pizzas from Michael Rossio to Calabec Foods, Inc. Is there someone here from Come on up.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Just state your name for the record, so I'll open this hearing up.
Yeah, my name's Steve Beck, Calabec Foods, Inc.
All right. And you are, just tell us a little bit about yourself and the plan here.
Yeah, sure. I'm a legacy food and beverage guy, both in big companies and small public and private and family-run companies, and overseeing restaurants along the way. I've been looking for a specific opportunity, and Mike was kind enough to show me what he's done with Gloria's, which is a great 25-plus year legacy restaurant here, serving the Winchester community in a really good way. So I want to continue to build on that good legacy. There's going to be no changes of any material kind. We're not turning it into a French bistro, and I look forward to working with the town to continue that.
Great. At this point, I would invite anyone from the public if they have any comments on this public hearing. All right, seeing none. Any questions from any board members? Hearing none. Any discussion?
I'll just say that the elementary schools would probably be very disappointed if it was turned into a French bistro and they have pizza day.
Pizza twice a week, right?
I don't know, maybe they're like snails. Yeah, who knows?
And I'll just say, Mike has, as you said, quite a legacy in this town. Extremely generous to a lot of organizations in this town, to our schools. I can tell you stories, for an hour now about all the things I've gone to that Mike has generously donated his time, his, whatever sports team, the causes that they had. I wish him well in his future endeavors. We appreciate everything he did for the town and our community, and we're looking forward for a new chapter and working with you and hopefully continuing that great legacy at Gloria's. So.
Yeah, and Michael will stay on as sort of an unofficial advisory position. He's generously donated his time for that, so we'll continue to have him involved as necessary.
So, hearing no other discussion from anyone, we'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the transfer of the common victualler license for Gloria's Pizzeria located at 920 Main Street from Michael Rossio to Calabec Foods, Inc. and Stephen Beck.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none? Great.
Thank you very much.
You're all set. Good
Yeah,
luck.
come on by.
Sure will.
All right, we have a second license this evening. Are there representatives here from PPT Hospitality LLC? Come on up. State your name for the record and we'll open the hearing.
Good evening, my name is David McBride. I'm an attorney with an office at 19 Cherry Street in Danvers. And with me is Pacharan Jisom, who is the owner and the manager of the LLC.
Okay, great. So we got some information in our packets. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are in the process here?
All right, we're in the process of purchasing the property, the business, from the present owner who runs the operation called Mythos Restaurant. My client owns an LLC called PPT Hospitality. She is the sole owner of that. Pacharan Jisom is 38 years old. She's a native of Thailand. She's a United States citizen since 2015. She's lived in the United States since 2006 after she graduated from Bangkok University. She has an extensive background in the restaurant business. Her family owns several restaurants in Thailand, and since she's been in the United States, she has operated restaurants, not owned them, but operated restaurants and worked in management in several restaurants, including restaurants that dispense liquor. She has been certified in California when she was living there. Their program is called Serve Safe, and that is something that we have a certification from that we included in our package. She also, while working for 4 years at Legal Seafoods in Boston, completed an internal class in the safety elements of liquor and dispersing liquor. The restaurant, and if you're not familiar with the premises at 831 Main Street, it is presently or has been recently operated as a restaurant with a liquor license. They had a beer and wine license, and we are applying for an all-alcoholic restaurant license. We are aware that last week I was made aware by Jen Cafarella that some work had begun on the premises prematurely. That was something that my client was not aware of, and we've stopped it immediately, and we've made appropriate entree with the Board of Health and the building inspector's office today, and we'll begin the process of getting an appropriate permit before any other work is done. There was some demolition work that was done by a contractor, a licensed contractor that we hired, but he did not have our authority to be doing that, and we apologize for allowing that to happen prematurely. The restaurant will be a family-style restaurant, have 55 seats, what my client plans to have for the restaurant. There will not be a bar in the restaurant that will be open to patrons. There'd be a service bar that waitstaff can use when people who are having dinner order an alcoholic beverage. My client is very qualified for this position to run a restaurant in this fashion. She's an upstanding citizen. She is somebody with an extensive restaurant background, and she's very anxious to bring Thai food to Winchester. So that's where we're at.
So a couple things before I open up to the rest of the board. In talking with staff, I think there was some concern about, work obviously being performed without proper permitting, and, not getting a demolition permit from, in the health department to sign off on that. So, I think, given that, we may want to continue this and see, make sure everything's in order with our staff agencies before we move forward. But that's just my thought. I don't know if I'm ready to vote on granting a license, knowing that, there's some non-compliance, some miscommunications that have occurred to start. So, I think it might be good to give our staff a couple weeks just to get up to speed on everything, and then maybe come back and consider this. I'm certainly happy to open it up to if there's anyone from the public here that wants to comment on it, but that would just be my thoughts. Not sure.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could respond to that, I think that's very reasonable. As I said, my client apologizes for the fact that that happened. It's not her style, it wasn't her intention, it wasn't done with her knowledge. So we are happy to, in effect, prove ourselves, if you will, by following the rules and making the appropriate applications.
Yeah, I think that would make our staff departments a little more comfortable, and certainly, at least where I sit, a little bit more comfortable with this process going forward. I don't know if anyone has anything, other thoughts.
I was just going to say, Rich, maybe we can have a conditional approval and have the subject to the town manager's approval from the departments. There's a pretty low threshold for a demo permit. I understand it. Things happen along the way when you're working on a project, but I don't want to drive them back in here if it seems like things are moving in the right direction. But certainly, staff needs to approve things moving forward. But I don't know if they need to come back in for us if we're otherwise going to approve it. But that would be my only suggestion.
I know I can appreciate the suggestion. I just think it would make sense to do that. I don't know if I'm ready to do a conditional approval at this point. That's just where I sit. Certainly happy to open it up to everyone else, but there's just some, I think staff needs a little bit more time. You were just in here today, I think, to the different departments and stuff, so. Usually, typically, when we see this, we get sign-offs from all our departments beforehand, so I just want to make sure everything checks out and everyone's comfortable before we rush through this. I'm certainly happy to have you come in. Our next meeting's the 19th or January 9th. January 9th.
When would you plan to open?
We doesn't have the, like, we're not rushed to open. We just want to make everything like done and ready and train the worker, like how to cook and prepare the food like correctly, and then we can just like.
And when would you want to start hiring the employees to train them?
Probably about like February.
February?
Yes.
Okay. Because I would hate, they're making an investment in the town, right? And we appreciate that you're making an investment in the town, and I would hate for them to be making all of this investment without the security of knowing that they have a liquor license, because the liquor license is going to be necessary for the restaurant to be successful. So I think that, we can approve it with the understanding that, no further violations of any of our permitting authorities, whether it's building or health or any other department, can happen, right? But, yeah, I mean, that's my concern, somebody who's making an investment in our town, both in time and money, and I just don't want to stand in front of that and put more uncertainty on a business that is it's uncertain enough as it is, to the restaurant business, and especially on a food that we haven't had Thai food in Winchester before, right? Anybody who wants Thai food right now has to go to Arlington or go to Woburn, right? And I think it would be great to have that in Winchester, so I don't want to stand in front of that, and so I would be okay with approving that tonight.
Yeah, I just would want our staff and our departments to be able to do the proper due diligence. I think there's still a lot of questions out there, and some of the stuff that's been submitted hasn't been submitted, so just my take. I'd be happy to have you come back in on the 19th or the 9th. I don't know if that would interfere with your current plan.
On the 19th, if that's the next meeting, that would be acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone have a problem with just kicking us over to the 19th?
It's fine.
No.
So we've opened the hearing. Is there anyone from the public here? I don't know if I asked this, can't remember. Wishing to comment? Great. No. So we'll just continue the hearing until the 19th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is that also at 7?
It'll be at 7:30
7:30. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board.
or 7:45 for the hearings. So yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Okay. We're going to do the town manager screening committee presentation next, and then we'll get into the regular flow of our agenda. So Beth, if you want to recuse yourself at this point, come grab you. I'd ask John and Ray, looks like, and Enzo, come on up.
Good job.
If you could all just introduce yourselves for the record and the viewers at home.
Sure. I'm Ray Santilli from Community Paradigm Associates. John Petrin, Community Paradigm.
Hi, Enzo Rashinato from the Finance Committee.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. I understand, Enzo, you were the chair of the screening committee that this board put together to screen candidates to present to us as finalists. And so I think you're here tonight to make a brief presentation.
That's correct. Yep. I'm gonna let John take the lead.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening to have this discussion. And so the board has been working with Community Paradigm's been working with the board on the process for you to appoint your next town manager. So you put together a screening committee for us to work with, 6 members, and I want to say it was a great screening committee. We really enjoyed working with this screening committee, and so we started the process. We worked with all of you to put together a position statement for the community, and in the end, we received 22 applications. The screening committee received all the applications, so they saw everything that was before them. We worked with the screening committee to review each of those applicants and determine which of those applicants would be given interviews. So 7 applicants were highlighted. We interviewed 6 of those applicants, and the screening committee determined to move 4 people forward, 1 including the interim town manager in this position. One of those candidates withdrew as we were going through the backgrounds and the reference checks. And so we're down to 3 finalists that have been presented to this board. You received from us a final report as to the candidates. We did review and background checks on 2 of the 3. It was determined up front we would not do a background check on your internal candidate, which is which is usually the situation. You know the person, there's no sense, and it becomes complicated too, because getting reference checks on a person who is going to be the town manager, you're potentially going to be asking people who may be working for that person to provide background check, reference checks. It gets a little bit more difficult. So in this case, we did not do that, but you have the reference checks on the 2 candidates that are there, besides the 3rd person. So that's all before you. We provided, you can see we interviewed 5 people for each of those folks, and you have the remarks. We keep everything on a positive side relative to the remarks, but we also have nothing to add. The other 2 folks are known people within the business here in Massachusetts, and have solid reputations within Massachusetts. So you have your 3 finalists. I'll turn it over to Enzo to talk about the process within the committee.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think John said it well. We had 20 candidates. We selected, I think, 7 of them. 6 of them ended up coming in for interviews. I think we did an hour-long interview with each, an hour plus, with each. I think Community Paradigm did a fantastic job of facilitating the discussion, going through a consistent set of questions, and then we would, afterwards, we drill into certain parts depending on the candidates. I think the 3 candidates you have in front of you, I think, I thought all were extremely qualified, right? So we have the 2 external candidates. Obviously, we didn't interview Beth, but most people on the committee have worked with Beth, so I think we all agreed that we didn't need to interview her. I think it was really clear that she's in that same echelon.
I also want to thank Patty. She provided support to the committee, and really was excellent to work with, on the backside, putting the meetings together and getting information out. So I just want to thank her for her assistance. We don't always have that, so it was nice to have that town support relative to that. So thank you to Patty for
even though she never showed her face.
That was intentional.
Yeah.
Patty's the best. Well, thank you for coming in. Enzo, I want to thank you and the screening committee for all the hours that you put into this and interviewing candidates. I heard it was on a Friday and a Saturday that those interviews took place, so I appreciate you obviously giving up weekend time to do that. It's an important task, and I think our board is grateful that you were able to narrow that down and find consensus and deliver those names to us. And Paradigm, thank you so far for all the work you did with the screening committee in getting us these finalists. So with that, did you want to announce who the finalists were? Or?
So you have 3 finalists, and in order of the interviews, come Wednesday night, we have Chris Senior, who is currently the town manager for the town of Cohasset. We have Anthony Ansaldi, who is currently the town administrator in the town of Littleton, and you have Beth Rudolph, who is the interim town manager here in Winchester. So those are your 3 finalists. The board members have been provided the cover sheet and the resume that we reviewed and that the screening committee had available to them as we went forward. So you have that in your packet, as well, again, as the comments that we've put together on each of those candidates within there.
Great. We received that, so thank you for that. So my understanding is we're going to interview all the candidates on Wednesday night, starting at 6 o'clock.
Correct.
It'll be live on WinCam. The public's obviously welcome to attend as well in this room. Each candidate will be given an hour interview, and then there's a 15-minute window in between each candidate as well. Any questions on what we've covered so far from any of the board members? Or any thoughts?
I just have a question. You do reference checks, but do a background check, like social media, Corey, financial,
Yes.
that kind of stuff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions at this point? Discussion?
You can do a background check on this guy, too. I've been worried about him for a while.
Not sure we have enough time for that, but,
Or we can talk later.
Yeah, clearly that's not.
there's no qualifications to be a member of the select board as.
That's
We know that quite well, so.
That's why we're here.
After working with them for 40 years, I get I get this concept.
All right, well, thank you, Enzo, for all your hard work again on the committee part. In terms of paradigm, we have, why don't you walk the board through the next steps? So for Wednesday, we have those interviews coming up. I think there were some questions that were circulated that, John, you had.
Sure. So what we talked about, did work with the chair and vice chair, as to the process. And so the idea is that we'll ask some set questions for the first approximately 45 minutes, which is kind of the way we worked, with the screening committee. And then we'll open it up for additional questions you may, have individually, moving forward. So we'll have, 15 minutes left. And again, I want to stress this is your interview. We're here to assist with the process. And if you feel you need to go a little bit further, that's your decision to make. So we're just here to assist you in that process. But we had provided, many questions we've seen, over time, and I think we've developed, a list of questions that you've seen that, should work for your community. And I believe Richard and Thea had worked on that. And so we'll move forward. And again, during the interview process, if you want to ask a follow-up on the portion where we're asking questions, please feel free to do that. Because sometimes it's, better to ask the follow-up right there and then versus waiting till, 30 minutes later, at that point. We're open, and again, we're here to assist you. So we'll run through that process. At the end of the evening, we're here to assist you with discussion. Any questions you may have, you've set up a meeting for next Monday night, a week from tonight, to have your deliberation. But if you have questions in between, we're available to assist you to work through your process, to get comfortable with your final selection as you go forward.
Do some boards weight, whether it's any of these categories?
I'm sorry?
Do some boards weight these different categories? Leadership, management, finance?
No, I don't believe so. We've been asked about, some sort of algorithm, a grid sheet, and we don't provide that because everybody sees we were asked that from this committee. And the thing is, everybody sees things from a different eye. That's why you have a 5-member board. So you're going to see, and when we do these behind the scenes, oftentimes it's Ray, myself, Bernie, and Sharon Flaherty, and we see things differently. That's why we have the panel, and we pick up on different things. So you'll get that and you'll pull it together. In the end, you'll probably end up on the same page, with the big
I was gonna say,
discussion.
you may put emphasis on a certain category, Michael may put a different emphasis, and everybody may have their own. And if you're looking at each of the 3 candidates with your emphasis, then you'll be fine.
Yep.
If you're putting emphasis on candidate A in one category and candidate B in a separate category, that becomes a little difficult for yourself.
Right.
So we have found that these work. You know, so the sections here are what we typically used. You saw I think we had also provided what the screening committee had used, which is the standard. So we start with an introduction. We then run into some leadership management discussion. You know, then get into, Enzo asked questions on finances, you know, when it came to that. So we'll go through these various areas to make sure that, you know, you get a sense of how these folks will operate through the process.
You think an hour per candidate's enough time?
Typically it is.
We did get, I think, very in-depth in the 1 hour interview, so I think it's more than enough time.
Okay, thanks.
So as John mentioned, Anthony and I, this week, we worked on questions, got them to John. John then, you know, tweaked them a little bit. So if you have any, I know he sent an email to all of you. If there's any issues with those questions or anything you want to see added in, I'd you know, reach out to John directly and do that. Like you said, at any time, you know, the idea is that this would be a dialogue. You could certainly ask follow-up questions. You know, if there's something, ask it, you know, right away. So, but with John facilitating the interviews, I think it gives us a chance to just be active listeners and certainly, you know, just worry about the follow-up questions rather than, you know, when's my set question coming up that I have to ask. So I think, at least for me personally, I think that helps, that I'm able to do that.
I think that's what we find, you know, quite often, and, you know, Enzo can speak to that, but, you know, by allowing you to be the active listener and us asking the questions, we're kind of, I'm not listening to the answer as much as I am preparing, you know, to move forward in this, while you can listen to the answer, you know, on this, and we're listening to see if we need to ask a different question, you know, within a specific area, or a follow-up of ourselves. If someone has given us an answer that is interesting, we want to get more, we may say, well, can you give us an example, or, you know, or ask it in a different way, too.
And I think that's exactly, I mean, we had the same concerns going into the process, and that's exactly how it worked out, right? Where with John asking the questions, we were able to really focus on the answers, and then, you know, just ask questions if we had follow-ups, or wait till the end to ask a specific question that we wanted to do.
John, at this table, we've had, you know, discussions about what happens after we interview. What are the next steps? You know, do we narrow it down to 2 and do a second round of interview? I expressed, you know, our conversation that, you know, typically towns don't do that because you kind of get everything you're going to get out of that interview in that one interview. But you've mentioned that there might be other tools that towns employ that, you know, might make board members, give board members a certain comfort level to select a candidate. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about just, you know, plant those seeds, you know, because we'll certainly, after we have the interviews on Wednesday night, discuss the next steps and see where we go. But, you know, what are some of the other mechanisms that towns sometimes use?
So what you could potentially do, you know, if we get through this Wednesday night and you feel you want more, we could, you know, what a couple of communities have done is do a meet and greet with candidates. So you could set something up prior to your Monday night. So we're scheduled for next Monday evening for further discussion. We could set something up at, you know, late afternoon for you to meet and greet with the candidates if you wish. We can set up phone calls. You know, if you want to have, you know, pursue, you know, something with an individual conversation, you know, that has occurred, you know, before. Again, we're here to assist you with that process, you know, and getting comfortable. I think for the most part, I'd say probably 3/4 of the time, most boards are ready to make their decision right after the interview that evening. You know, 1/3, you know, 1/4 to 1/3 wish to, you know, mull it over, you know, for a few days. So again, that's up to, you know, each board, you know, as to how to proceed. So you set it up for, you know, that period in between. If you have questions between, we're available. You know, you give us a call and we'll walk you through potentially what we hear or what we know. If you have questions on any particular issue, you know, with, you know, any of the candidates going forward. You know, particularly the 2. Now, the screening committee did not interview, you know, with Beth, so I don't have as much detail on that candidate, but the other 2, you know, I've known these folks. Ray's known them, you know, for several years now, so we can, you know, provide more detail in that if need be. And there were questions, you know, and that's what we worked through with the screening committee, when we deliberated, there were questions on the table, and we just kind of assisted them in working through that.
Any questions or discussion from board members at this point on the process?
Just want to say thank you to everyone involved. I know it's been a lot of work. And Enzo, if you wouldn't mind just mentioning the names of the other members of the committee. I know there were a lot of people, as Rich had said, working on the weekends and sticking to a pretty aggressive timeline for us. And I honestly do forget everybody that was there.
Yeah,
But
no problem. Right. So Michelle Bergstrom from the school committee, Diab Jarius from the planning board, Dot Butler, Cheryl Sbarra, and Mark Toogood, our assistant town manager.
Great, thank you. Please extend our appreciation to everyone there.
Absolutely.
I know they're probably watching, as they always do, our meetings. But, appreciate
From
it.
our perspective, it was a very good committee to work with. I think the discussions were, in depth, and their insight was really valuable at the table. I can't always say that. I won't say which committees I can't say that about, but, in this case, we enjoyed, I think, the conversations, we enjoyed the meetings, with them, and again, give them credit for being a Friday night and a Saturday morning, on these interviews, and Mark from another, state,
Mark from his tent.
Yeah, Mark from his tent. No, it worked very well, and we enjoyed the communication, that went on between the committee during that time.
Great.
And the finance committee appreciates your plug from earlier this evening. So thanks for that.
Well, thank you all. And so anyone watching at home or here, certainly tune in Wednesday starting at 6 o'clock. We'll run those interviews. It will at least be about 3 hours and 45 minutes, it sounds like. So a little bit of a long night. So make sure you have your caffeine that day. But we'll get through it and then take the next steps. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. See you on
Wednesday.
And Monday. Enjoyed the ride around town this evening. I was early and I was riding around looking at the lights, and it really is very picturesque, I'm going to say.
Yeah, people do a good job. Get that. We're going to go back up to Beth.
Okay.
And then I'm going to actually open up public comment right now. While we're waiting for Beth Rudolph to join us again, I'd open it up to public comment at this point. If there's anyone here for public comment, feel free to come up. We recognize you and speak. All right, seeing no one for public comment. While we're waiting for Beth, why don't we do the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda for Monday, December 5th, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Hey, Beth.
What did you just do?
The consent agenda. And the public comment. There's time for public comment. That's why we tape these things, right?
Yeah.
Patty, I thought we had some donations today, no?
No.
No donations? Okay.
Came in last minute today.
Okay, so no donations. Are you ready to give your town manager's report?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
So just a few updates. I wanted to mention that the DPW just secured a grant of $7,800 through Mass DEP's Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. So once that comes through, we'll have the board accept that formally. But I want to thank Jay and Leanne and Nick from the transportation for their efforts on there.
Thank you.
Just a few brief updates on construction projects. So the Eversource 345 kV project, they're working at the Aberjona River crossing. Hopefully that will be finished up in the next few weeks. And they'll be working day to day on other items around town. Paving is complete on the 115 project for this year. We don't expect any additional work to happen this year. Main Street bridge railing. So we're kind of at a standstill at the moment. Our contractor and their precast manufacturer have been having some supply chain issues. So once the caps are in, they'll finish the work on the upstream side of the bridge, but I don't have a schedule for that at the moment. North Reservoir Dam construction is moving along. We expect it to be substantially complete in January, and then we'll do final landscaping in the spring. Transfer station renovation, the paving is happening right now. And there's a late opening tomorrow. The transfer station will be opening at 3 p.m. tomorrow to accommodate that. Manchester Field turf replacement, that project is done. Obviously, there was the Thanksgiving Day game there a few weeks ago, which I think went very well. Mystic School Sports Court, the paving is done out there, and they'll be doing the final markings and tile installation in the spring.
Actually, they're doing those now.
Oh.
The tiles are going in and out at least.
Okay, even better.
Yeah.
Morocco School roof, that work is ongoing, expected to be complete in late December or early January. And then we have a variety of projects, some of which were just funded at fall time meeting that we're starting work on in terms of designing and bidding those. A few events around town. There's the Luminaria Night fundraiser for the Winchester Got Lunch and Make-A-Wish Foundation happening on Sunday, December 11th. You can order those kits online. There's information on the town's website about that. The annual holiday house tour is Monday, December 12th, December 18th from 12 to 4 p.m. Tickets are on sale at Bookends. And I also want to mention that the MBTA just notified us that they're having a virtual public meeting just to provide an update on the project, December 14th. And that information is available on the town's website as well. That's all I had. Thank you.
That house tour it's on Sunday, December 18th.
Sorry.
From 12 to 4. So even better, you don't have to take a day off to go visit the houses. So. And I know people put a lot of effort into those, so it's a neat little thing to do in town. So
I have a question for Jay. Jay, do you have a hand in the fence work around Manchester Field? I walked by that today. What a difference. No rusty fence. It's unbelievable.
is the fence work done at this point? That's great.
Except for the side of the church, actually there's 8-foot fence going on the left side coming in. There'll be an extra.
Looks really great. Nice job.
In terms of the railings, so I noticed one railing's been, on Main Street, it's been cut down, and it looks like they're gonna put the cap on it. They haven't done that to the other side. Do they need to do that to the other
They need
side?
to do the other side as well.
Okay, and is the plan, as soon as those caps come in, to do both sides?
That was the plan, so, I think we'll, obviously, given where we are just in December right now, we'll kind of evaluate, but, the next side should go much faster because everything's being manufactured at once.
Okay,
So that's the goal.
all right. And we're gonna leave those spaces open until
Yes.
they need. Okay, good. Any other questions for Beth on her report? Okay. Thanks, Beth. Moving on, we have the Climate Action Advisory Committee update. So if representatives want to come on up.
The whole team with me.
All right. Pull some chairs up if you want.
How are you?
With the mouse come out.
So once I'm done, the seat is open.
Okay. No worries. Okay, we have a short PowerPoint presentation that I think we're pulling up here.
And who's going to be the clicker?
Do you want to click? You want me to click?
Well,
I'll be happy to click.
Good answer.
Good evening. I'm Rick Eno. I'm the chair of the Climate Action Advisory Committee. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us tonight. We could click ahead. I know you should have asked for directions.
The left button.
Of course, it's the left button. Here we go. The agenda tonight, fairly brief, but first of all, I'd like to introduce to you the members of the Climate Action Advisory Committee. They're excited to be here this evening. We have a number of priorities for 2023, and tonight we want to focus on Wind Power 100, which we think is a really interesting opportunity, the right time for the town, and then talk a little bit, get your input on working together, particularly around Wind Power 100 and others. The committee is a great committee. You appointed them, and I think you probably met a number of them only by Zoom, so now they're here. And maybe just a quick introduction. I'm Rick Eno, the chair. Prisetta?
Prisetta Calabi, vice chair.
Ruth?
I'm Ruth Charmarkey, and I mostly work on resiliency.
Wei?
Wei Chen, work on the EV side of the work.
Jason?
Jason Roeder, work on wind power and building efficiency.
Josh?
Josh Bears, helping to draft the update of the town's sustainable building policy, which is from 2009, so 14 years old now.
And Tapas?
I'm Tapas. I'm the high school representative, and I'm mainly working on improving organic waste collection at the transfer station.
Is Maddie here?
No, she wrote she can't come.
She couldn't make it. Maddie is also, we're fortunate to have two high school students working with us this year. Maddie's our point person at Winchester High School, and Ken's here as well.
Yep. Hi, everyone.
Great. And the team's working very hard on a number of things relevant to the implementation of the CAP. So the key points tonight, I think what we've seen in the news is starting to pan out. There's a lot of volatility in the fossil fuel markets, and the cost of renewables has been falling. And we're seeing something very interesting now in Winchester, is that Wind Power 100, which we'll get into the definitions, is now much lower cost than basic Eversource power. It's comparable in cost to go to 100% renewables to other wind power options. You know, we did some quick calculations that $6 more per month per $100 of power basically eliminates greenhouse gases from electricity for a household. It offers a huge reduction in greenhouse gases, which are 33% reduction of the home electric greenhouse gases. And by switching over, Eversource still provides the services. It's you get the same billing, the same maintenance. I did it myself. It's very quick. It's easy. And from the committee's perspective, Wind Power 100 is the cheapest, fastest way for a household and the town to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. Now some definitions, and we've got some experts here with us. Energy is a very complicated industry, but in terms of this presentation, the definitions on the left is, Eversource Basic is what an individual could acquire power through, and it meets the Massachusetts Renewable Energy Standards of 24% renewable. There's also a set of 3 wind power community aggregation options that a resident or small business is able to access. Starting from the bottom, there's Wind Power Basic. This also meets the Massachusetts Renewable Energy Standard, 24% renewable, and it's what someone is automatically enrolled in town if they go through the aggregation option. There's another option, a bit more renewable in nature, Wind Power Standard. It's up to 44% renewable option in the power that one gets. And Wind Power 100 is the focus tonight, which is an opt-in, opt-up actually, 100% renewable energy that you can enroll in. On the right-hand side, the benefits of Wind Power 100, it gives a homeowner or a small business all green electricity. It gives you price stability. The price is set every 24 months, where Eversource is priced every 6 months. One can opt in or out. It's not a 24-month contract. You can move in or out, so it's not a long-term commitment, but you get all guaranteed local wind and solar energy by doing that. And by doing so, you drop your household CO2 footprint. This is the latest cost going as of January 1. Eversource Basic is about 25 cents a kilowatt hour. Wind Power 100 is 16.6 cents a kilowatt hour, 15.7 for Wind Power Standard, and 14.9 for Wind Power Basic. So you could see that the way the markets have moved with volatility in fossil fuels and the aggregation power of the Winchester program, Wind Power 100 is very much on par with lots of other options in town, and it gives a huge advantage in terms of greenhouse gases. And on the bottom, we calculated for an average Winchester home of 850 kilowatt hours, what does that mean in terms of a monthly electricity bill? So $218 for Eversource Basic, $141 for Wind Power 100, $133 and $127 across the board. Very different than, I think in our town meeting presentation, I think people were kind of stunned that Wind Power 100 was actually lower cost than Eversource Basic. It's actually substantially lower cost than Eversource Basic. This is something that was sent to us. It's Town of Winchester Wind Power, the standard versus Eversource. Very compelling price difference.
So
and
is
then
is that Wind Power 100?
No, that's Wind Power. Let me see, I can go back. It's the Wind Power Standard.
Okay.
So now from a town perspective, why is this important to the town? It's important to a resident who wishes to green up their electricity supply, but residential buildings cause 43% of town greenhouse gas. When you add in the municipal and businesses, it's up to 60-something, low 60% of the town greenhouse gases, and electricity is a major component of what causes CO2 emissions in these buildings or stationary sources. The Climate Action Plan, which we're implementing, calls for an 80% reduction by 2050 in greenhouse gases in the town versus the 2017 benchmark, and 40% by 2030. We're finalizing the numbers, but getting a portion, about half or maybe a bit more than half of Winchester homes onto Wind Power 100 starts to get us within striking distance of the 2030 goal. So it's a very interesting opportunity. If we're serious about implementing the cap, this is a very effective way to start moving in that direction.
What percentage of Winchester homes are on wind power now?
On Wind Power 100, I would guess it's a low single-digit percent, I think, for Wind Power 100.
It's coming up to about 300 households.
Which would be a little less than...
Out of 70, about 7,000 buildings. Right.
So mid-single-digit percent on Wind Power 100. We put this in there on how to quickly sign up. It takes 30 seconds. You just go onto a link, to a QR code, and you're there. It's not a burden of paperwork.
You can scan it, right?
Yeah, anyway, we'll pause the meeting for a second for the select board to scan, so we can all move over. We can leave with a little...
Economics were compelling. I got my bill, and I'm like, all right.
All right. So now that's the background for you. The discussion. I think what we see within the Climate Action Committee that Wind Power 100, and given what's going on in the electricity markets and our town's Climate Action Plan, this is a really good opportunity to start to push for the adoption of Wind Power 100. Things that have been talked about in the past are various incentives, a lottery, even cookies to people that sign up. In a meeting with Beth, she's intrigued and supportive of the idea to send a letter out in 2023 to residents explaining this, and keen to get other input from the select board on things we could do here. And then just covering that last point before we get into that discussion, we would like to set the stage for coming back to you on other priorities that we're surfacing. We focused on Wind Power 100 tonight, but there's a very interesting opportunity around specialized energy codes, which will take some time to go through, which we hope the select board will play a key role in going forward, and keen to support you in major town developments like we're doing with Lynch and other resilience issues. So with that, love to get any comments, or either from the Climate Action Committee or the Select Board, on thoughts on Wind Power 100, any questions, and maybe things we could do collectively to increase its adoption in town.
Thank you. Any questions, thoughts?
Mike?
I was just going to say thanks, Rick and everyone. Really appreciate this. One of the other benefits of the wind power program is just the stability of the pricing as well for residents too. So you don't have to worry about if the market fluctuation is going to be there. This is locked in for a while, right? For 2 years, right?
And by statute, Eversource can change its price every 6 months. So if you're into some kind of budget, long forecasting, you can have a 2-year window on what your electricity is going to cost if you opt into wind power.
And we've seen outside of wind power, the market has fluctuated quite a bit, right? So it's hard if you're on a limited budget to plan for that.
In fact, if you go on the website, if you want to go back to the QR code page, we can get people to, at-home viewers can get to this can use this QR code. Also, it graphs out the differences between the non-renewable and the renewable over time, and the non-renewable looks like it's crazy, and the renewable is really pretty clear and overall going down.
Here, right?
That one, yeah, I think so. Thank you.
One clarification, is it 2 years from when I sign up, or is it 2 years
From
at the
1st of
program?
January. Oh, it's 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, the current contract is going to be from essentially January 23 through December 24.
But the program has existed since 2017. It's kind of shocking how few people in town that it exists, but it's been here since 2017, it's not going away. There's a great, I mean, it's a really big and growing nationwide, it's not just in Winchester. We're one of 3 communities. We're among the first in the country to get a community ag program. We have very dedicated people in town who established this and got it through, past the select board, and it met everybody's approval at the time. So we should really take advantage of it, especially now that it is so much cheaper, realistic and cheaper.
So, wasn't, the wind power program was, you were automatically enrolled in it unless you opted out, correct? That's the basic program.
And that's about 90% of households, a little bit more.
Okay.
And
The
there's-
middle one, right?
That's
You're getting the
Standards?
middle on the standard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And if you want to have a little more green,
You
you
go to
can
the
add a little
100.
more green. And if you want to be all green, you go up to 100.
And the advantage of our 100 over other green ones is that we don't do biomass, right? We only do solar and wind, but we don't do the dirtier green power, right?
right, we
The
do green
biomass,
green.
right?
Do
We do,
bright
green,
green.
yeah. And yet it's still much cheaper than Eversource.
Much
so
cheaper,
that's-
and the
yeah.
difference among the 3 programs, that was the $6. If, whether you do the basic, the standard, or the Wind Power 100, it's $6 a month difference, which is ridiculous. In fact, I have to say, I think the whole thing is ridiculous. We talk about all this stuff all the time, and you can do solar panels, and you can buy a Tesla, and you can put in heat pumps and whatever, and these things are orders of magnitude, like 4+ orders of magnitude. $6 a month for what it, plus on top of your electricity, you can be a green hero and help town as well as your own carbon footprint. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer.
So I just want to be clear for myself and maybe
Yeah.
anyone who else watched this, is that if you're automatically enrolled in the Wind Power Standard program, and the only upgrade you can do is the Wind Power 100, right?
That's basic.
That's correct.
Right.
How do you get
You can
basic?
go down.
Yeah, you can go down to basic?
Downgrade.
You downgrade.
You have to
basically.
call in to
Option
downgrade.
into the lower.
Okay, so I just want to be clear for us.
That's how it was, at least when we approved it
Okay.
in 2017.
So we're trying to get households to upgrade to
Upgrade to 100.
100, right?
And the other thing about the opting in and out and how easy it is, and it's so easy, you don't even need your account number. If you remember your address, and if you don't remember your address, you have other issues. But if you remember your address, you can just type in. It literally takes between 20 and 30 seconds, depending on how fast your server is. If, catastrophe happens, and I can't even imagine a scenario, but if for some reason Eversource suddenly becomes drastically cheaper, it takes the same 20 to 30 seconds to go back to Eversource. You can do that. So this is not one of these fly-by-night, glib, slick things where you're going to get stuck for the rest of your life and they're going to jack the prices. It's just not like that. There are a lot of people out there doing that, but this program is absolutely not like that. It is very solid in every regard, including you can get out anytime. I don't know why you'd want to, but just so you know, that option is there in both directions. You can get in and you can get out.
Can I ask, is the way this is organized, if more people join the 100 program, will that decrease the cost, or is that fairly standard? So like a supply and demand, or?
No, it wouldn't decrease the cost. Yeah, when this is negotiated every 2 to 3 years, we get essentially the best price on the program, regardless of how many people.
Okay. And then my understanding is at one point there were maybe federal tax incentives for 100% renewable energy. Is that
There's a portion
so?
of it, of 100, that is tax deductible, and I thought it was up there somewhere. Obviously not. The tax deductibility is on the portion that's above and beyond what Massachusetts requires, because you can't deduct your electric bill, but you can get a green credit for the part above and beyond that. And this program is so carefully and nicely designed that you don't have to think about this, you will automatically get the amount that you can deduct from your taxes if you do deductions. So it's there. I mean, it's such a full service. It was well thought out when it was designed.
Other questions, other input?
So we were wondering if you had any ideas about how we could further incentivize this to households and residences. I'm hoping that if this is public, and we're hoping that all 50 people who are watching are going to be motivated. And how do we reach the other
50, that's
20?
an all-time great incentive. At this point in the hour, we're usually down to 10.
It's because they knew we were.
There are loyal viewers, though. We appreciate our loyal
Yeah,
viewers.
yeah. So the lottery was, I'm going to bring that up again because we had talked about whether we could get a bump going. We've been to the high school, we've handed out cookies and sheets of information and stuff like that. Can we get a bump going, as we did originally for smart permits, to offer an incentive that there would be a drawing for 5 households out of the first 500 that apply, that they could get something from town. They could get a free transfer sticker, they could get, I was hoping we could cover their electric bill for a month or something, but I gather there are logistical considerations
In
around
January or July?
Yeah, I think, Priscilla, I think you approached staff with this idea, and I think they were kicking it around. I think, it's tough for a municipality to pay someone's electric bill or something like that. So I think,
How about a sticker, a transfer sticker?
I think we'd have to check with legal to see what we can do and what we can't from that sense. I think the first thing you can do is, as we say in my office, it's not the money, it's the money. It's, I think getting the word out, specifically that graphic shows what people are saving.
Yeah.
I think, or what, a Tesla costs, 6 figures. You could do much better for the environment by spending $6
Exactly.
extra. I think that, creative marketing campaign, and maybe, it's a bunch of high school kids, putting together that social media campaign or,
Yep.
something, out there that, like a one-hitter that, gets people attention, and
Well, and it's
how to
going
do
to go
it.
in the letter that Beth
Yeah.
is sending.
Yeah, we had talked, because I think to the layperson, it's confusing. I think we all get mailers from a variety of people being like, you can, if you switch to this, you get, clean energy and all that. So this is like a legitimate town program. This is like a real thing.
Yeah.
There is real tangible benefit, and explaining that kind of process and what you can do for your community and for the greater good, I think is important. So there's some that we can do from a marketing
Are
perspective
there
that
things
way.
you would put in that we didn't highlight here that?
I think the costs and, how, what you can do for short money to really make a
Big difference.
big difference in
Right.
the environment.
That much money, that much difference. Right.
Yeah. And I think, inevitably, right, people are busy, they don't like to make these calls or, they just like to pay the bill. They don't want to deal with anything going forward. So if there's a way to, make it simple for people to sign up, I don't know how you can do that, but.
QR code is as simple as you can make it.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
literally.
Yep. But,
I think we have to continue to build awareness. I think awareness is the key issue, and then I think dollar per greenhouse gas reduction, something like you talked about, show just
Yeah.
the power of the program.
well, I think this winter, obviously, with, everyone realizing energy prices are going up, will probably be your best.
Yeah.
People's attention is peaked on this anyway, so it might be the good time, rather than in summer when people are, not feeling the pinch.
Well, unless they're HVAC.
Yeah.
I think getting through the PTAs, right, because
Yeah.
getting on the emails that the PTA sent out,
Mhm.
right? That's
Yeah.
several thousand households that are going to get it. And,
Right.
from a trusted source, and it is a town program, and, kids are involved in wanting to save their future,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's.
the usual suspects.
Is there a link on the town website to that, so you don't have to even scan the QR
Yeah.
code?
There is a whole wind power section on the town website. Yep.
But there's not.
I don't know if the QR code is up there or not,
I
but we
think
can
that
certainly
would be
add
worth
one.
doing. We shouldn't
Click
bother you
through.
with that, though. We can
Yeah.
totally do that.
Easy.
Yeah.
One click.
Any other questions or comments?
No,
Well-
it's easy. Inertia's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Right.
So, to look, I don't even know where that mailer came from. Or I just got the mailer in 30 seconds, I changed it. I'm like, oh, I have to go look at my meter number or whatever, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a pain in the neck. Because I've been looking at it for like 3 years. And it was so simple, and so can we put it with like the water and sewer bill? Or I can't remember where it came from, maybe there's some kind of prohibition why you can't do that. But,
There was a town-wide mailing.
Sorry to interrupt. I was gonna try to interject and say it was in our water and sewer bill
All
over
right.
the summer.
Thank you.
So we work with Susan McPhee and Fritzy and Gary Foldman.
Yep.
And we take their insert, or we take the draft and send it to the printer, they print them, and it goes in the water bill.
Okay.
If you wanna do it again, the
I
next
think
one.
that would be with the QR code, maybe. We can have a little 10-second clip of you saying how easy it was.
All right. Here he is, your spokesperson, right here. We'll put him on loan to you.
This is effective, all right? So you say your Eversource bill is $300 a month, and under Wind Power, it's $175.
Right.
Well, that's gonna be call to action, because I just got that bill, I'm looking at Jay's bill, I'm like, wow, you know, from the sprinkler or whatever. So I can pay for it, and it's just, and then I get the QR code there, take the picture, even so me, done, Mario.
Definitely the new spokesperson.
Right.
John's been wanting to do a TikTok anyway, so I'm gonna set him up for it, right there. Just put it out there.
Well, we thank you all for coming in this evening. I know you had to wait a little while before we got to you, but thank you. Appreciate all your hard work, and certainly this is a worthwhile endeavor, so thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time and the support.
Yeah.
All right. From electricity, we're going to move to water. No, for the record, this is
for you tonight.
This is Mr. Gill's final
Yes.
presentation on water.
I'm actually coming next week.
19th, yeah.
Coming next week.
Oh, no, we're just talking water and sewer, Jay. I wasn't saying your final time being here.
So while we're setting up, I just wanted to let you know, Mike Wise, the operations manager, will be the interim director of public works starting January 7th. So I want to welcome aboard. We're not going to miss a beat with him and staff getting ready for the winter, right? And he's going to be do a fantastic job with staff to keep the operation going, not missing a beat.
So that's when the first nor'easter of the season.
That's right. That's right.
Because you've been getting off easy.
That's right. That's right.
39 inches of snow.
I had 2,850 inches of snow in my tenure.
How many?
2,850 inches of snow.
Sure.
30, I got it all next. Got it right, tattoo.
Actually,
That was him measuring all the time.
When he leaves under the desk, there's going to be tally marks. You know?
Scratch it. I was looking, we had snow on December 5th, past few years.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
Are we getting some tonight? I don't think so, right?
I don't think so. I don't believe so. I'd like to welcome the Ames Group, Matt, once again, it's this time of year, to give an update on the water and sewer.
Great.
Yeah, I think,
Who wants to begin?
Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Mr. Chairman, other members of the Select Board, Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group, back with you again this evening for a water and sewer update. We were asked by the town to follow up on the rate study that we presented to you in the springtime, and out of that rate study came a rate recommendation from the Select Board that was supported and approved by a town meeting in the spring. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we were asked to come back and present to you around this time to give you an update on where things stood now that we know how FY22 ended up, and also as we can look a little bit at what's happened in FY23 so far. So we provided a report that I believe is in your packet that was really kind of a review of what we presented in this rate study and what has changed since then. That was the main gist of what was in the report. But for the slides that we have for you this evening, we will talk a little bit about that, but we're also going to do a little bit of a look back to some things that have happened over the last few years, just so you have a sense of what type of revenue and what type of expenses and what type of impact on retained earnings there have been over the last few years. Kind of sets the context for as we move forward here. So I encourage, as we move through this, if there are any questions or comments, I don't mind at all. We can stop wherever we are at that moment. Okay, so we're going to start with a quick review of the rate study itself. These are some highlights that came out of it. So let's think back to what we were looking at in the springtime. Obviously, we have a new perspective on things at this point because some things have happened since then, but this is solely a focus on what things look like then. The prior certification of retained earnings at that point was, as of July 2021, just over $1.8 million. We like to look at the percentage as well as just the total for retained earnings. That percentage represents the retained earnings balance when you compare it to the total budget or the total expenses in a given year. The town has indicated through its select board that it would like to be in the 8 to 10% range. So obviously that number is well above it. So that's a healthy retained earning balance at the certification that had last taken place at the rate study time. However, you probably remember, but when we do projections for the town for water sewer, we always look into the future multiple years. We like to present a 5-year look. Sometimes we do a 10-year look. I guess it depends on what the flavor is at that point. For the rate study itself in FY23, we did a 5-year look. We always look forward to compare what we think the expenses are going to be, what the revenues are going to be, and then we go from there. We always present it without rate action, just so you can kind of see how quickly things fall off if there were not to be any rate action. Now, that's not really reality. A responsible select board, a responsible town would never let that happen, but we still like to present that just so you have a sense of what things look like. So that look provided an average annual deficit of $1.1 million for the 5 years that we looked at, which was FY23 through FY27. In total, that was $5.7 million, again, without rate action. We presented to you in the springtime 3 options for rates. The focus was on option 3 at the time, which was a 3% increase in FY23 along with a 6.5 annual increase. That's annual, FY27 through FY24 through FY27. There was discussion amongst this group, and the select board ended up settling on a 3.5% increase in FY23, which is a little bit higher than the amount that came with option 3's recommendation, in addition to the 6.5 for the subsequent years. Now, the 6.5 wasn't voted, it was just a 1-year vote, but when that vote takes place, we have the other rates available for you that we think are necessary. So with that rate action in place, or at least the recommended rates, there are your updated projections. That's with revenue increases. You're down to a projected 62,000 annual deficit for those 5 years, 310,000 in total. And as was already mentioned, town meeting approved that rate increase. Here is the same information, but in numbers and graphical format. The numbers in the top, you see the rate plan that was adopted or was recommended by the select board at the time of the rate increase, as well as the projected deficits in this case, well, a few surpluses in there, and the projected retained earnings where we thought they would end up. When we make a rate recommendation like this for a 5-year look, we're trying to target the 8 to 10% by year 5. So you can see with the graph there on the left, we're trying to get that blue line to end up in between in the orange shaded area, which is 8 to 10%. On the right-hand side, you can see projected bills based on the rate plan. So with 6.5% per year, that equals about a $7 per bill increase to the average residential user. That's per bill increase to the average residential user. Okay, so here's the first where we're kind of looking back a little bit. So did some number crunching for the next few slides. Just want to give you a sense, kind of setting the table on what the town, what the Water Sewer Fund has been through the last few years from an expenditure standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, and eventually the impact on retained earnings. So the MWA assessments are obviously a big piece of the puzzle here in Winchester. It's there every year. They generally don't go down. I mean, sometimes they do. It depends on the town's flow share, but over a longer period of time, you're going to see them going up consistently. If you were to review MWA's annual budget document, which is available on their website, they do include what they anticipate. I think it's a loose anticipation, but what they anticipate expenses to increase on a yearly basis. They say 3.9% for water, 3.3% for sewer. That's everything. So that's O&M and capital together. So because that came from
I
MWA.
have, can I?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Does MWRA's revenue also go up on dry years, just like ours does? And are most of their costs fixed, just like ours are as well? So my question is, after a dry year, would their increase be less than after a wet year?
That's a good question.
It's based on water share. We'll see
Jimmy,
in
do you
2
know?
years.
That's sewer. Every year, the MWRA, I get a number from them
Yeah.
based on 1 million gallons, what it cost. I think 4 or 5 years ago it was 3,300. Right now, it sits at $4,628.12 per 1 million gallons.
Okay.
And it's not going down.
Right.
And that's straight from a high-ranking MWRA official. It goes up every year.
Okay.
But they,
It's not going down.
but they do have a rate, right? They publish a rate every year. So,
They do, but that's like the magic number
Yeah.
that you can go by away from the assessments and the, everything else they do.
Yeah, it's based on assessment, population, and capital projects when they start doing the annual assessment, yeah.
Trust me, they're not going down.
So when we use more water, like this last year of drought, we'll be paying for that. Our assessment will go up in 2 years for water, right?
Right,
Instead
2
of-
years, 3 years.
So we'll be
So-
paying for it through the
Yeah.
MWRA too.
Good example, this summer when we were doing the North Reservoir, where we were on MWRA through the whole summer, through the PRV on Forest Street, so we're gonna be paying for that 3 years down the road.
They still charge us if they make revenue, more money.
Make more money.
so because they include that information in their budget document, that's generally what we use when we project the assessments every year. We want to make sure that we're trying to capture those increases year to year. And this town, Winchester, is assessed based on for at least on the water side, their share of flow compared to all other members in a given year. So the group just talked about we just came off of a really dry, warm weather period, as you're aware. A lot of outdoor water usage. That will hit not in that will impact Winchester's assessment not for the upcoming fiscal year or the current one that we're in. It'll be in the next fiscal year, so that'll be FY24. So that's something to keep in mind as we move forward here. And for that reason, any rural community that sees a lot of outdoor water usage that are MWRA members, they're going to see those shifts like a roller coaster, because it's really dependent on that warmer season, how much water gets used. Compared to an urban community where there's less outdoor water usage, their assessments are more flat. They don't vary as much. On the sewer side, it's a different calculation for how assessments are done. It's based on a 3-year look, and it doesn't just include usage or flow. It includes a few other factors. It's a more complicated calculation on the sewer side. So system-wide average increases, this is for all members. Water went up 3.5% the last 5 years, 3.9 in the last 10. Sewer 2.1 the last 5 years, 2.5 the last 10. And if you add the two together, 2.6 the last 5 years, 3% the last 10. From Winchester's perspective, Winchester is unique in that the Chapter 110 tax levy impact does play a role in how the assessments impact rates or water sewer revenues, because the capital assessment is subject to the Chapter 110. So it is necessary, at least from a projection standpoint, and I know Leanne works with MWRA every year to make sure she gets the breakdown of O&M versus capital for that reason. There are other communities who won't ask for that breakdown because they don't need it. But the capital assessment is impacted by Chapter 110, O&M is not. So keep that in mind as we move forward here. So O&M went up 3.1, this is totals, this is water and sewer together. 3.1 the last 5 years, 3.7 the last 10. Capital actually went down recently. 3.7 the last 10, the total is 0.9 and 3.7. And then a comment on the Chapter 110 and its impact rates, or really rates and other revenues. Fund 13.55% of the capital assessment. Chapter 110 funds the rest, and 100% of the O&M. So if we just look at how the assessments impact rates, went up 2.3% the last 5 years, 3.7 the last 10, and there's your average increase. 62,000 in the last 5 years, 308 total, and then 84 the last 10, and 843,000 total. Other expenses, so we're getting away from MW right now on this slide. O&M expenses, which is operating, but we took out the MW assessments when we put this number up there. It went up 8% the last 5 years for an average increase of 165,000 annually. That's 823,000 over the 5-year period. Local debt, again, debt is subject to the Chapter 110. Increased an average of 6.7% the last 5 years for an average increase of 81,000 annually, 405,000 total. Indirects went up 5.6% the last 5 years, and there's the annual number and the total number. Capital outlay, which we define as capital that is funded out of retained earnings, not borrowed for, actually went down over the 5-year period, but there's still a decent amount of cost in there, especially related to MS4 as part of that line. And total expenses, which is kind of the bottom line number that we look at here, if you include all the 110 impact, you're at 3.2% last 5 years, 367 annually, 1.8 million over the 5-year period. If you take out the 110 impact, the average increase is 4.6% the last 5 years. And average increase of $304,000, 1.5 million total over the 5-year period. I do want to focus on that 4.6 number just briefly because that is how your expenses are going up on an annual basis. This is not MWRA. Again, that's taken out of here. But still, no, actually, I think it's in there. I think that is including it. 4.6% total. So in theory, your rates have to keep up with that amount, that 4.6%, to make sure you're covering your expenses. And a revenue look. Similar slide, but just look at the revenues real quick. That top table has your rate increases for the last 5 years. Averaged 4.4%. That big year, the 12%er in FY21, which was almost a perfect storm of sorts because that preceded the COVID year. That was the COVID year, really, and also was a very dry year. So you had a lot of usage, and then you had the 12% on top of that. Also had the service charge increase that year. User charges revenue increased an average of 4.7% the last 5 years. Average increase, 167,000 a year, 834 total over the 5-year period. Total revenue, bottom line, 3.9% increase last 5 years. 355 annually, 1.8 over the total. And then total revenue, again, we gotta look at net of Chapter 110 here. Went up 6.8% last 5 years. But we look at that total number in this case, that 1.4 million. You may recall the expense slide had it as 1.5 million over the 5 years. So net of Chapter 110 revenues are trailing slightly behind expenses, slightly behind. They're close. So the rate program has generally kept up with expenses, not totally, but generally. And here's your retained earnings impact over the 5-year period. Has gone down over the 5-year period, about $210,000, but look at how it dipped preceding that big year I just talked about. So this is a big reason why we and the select board ended up pushing for the increase that we did in that year. You could see how retained earnings were really dipping. And again, the perfect storm that year, but still got retained earnings back up to a very healthy amount, and now it's starting to trend a little bit downward again. Okay, so I think I got 2 more slides for you. Now this is kind of turning the page, focusing a little bit on what the report was talking about. This is progressing from what we had in the rate study. FY22 ended up with a small deficit of about $40,000. We had projected a deficit of about $275,000 in the rate study, so we're off a little bit, but there are reasons for that. They're outlined in the report. Retained earnings was certified at 1.55 million, this most recent certification, so that happened over the last few months, 12.4%. We had projected about 1.3 million in the rate study. For FY23, we're able to look forward already. We're halfway through it but the larger of the 2 largest billings of the 4 have already taken place. Generally, once you hit the colder months, they don't sway for too much from year to year.
Except, excuse me for interrupting you, In January, we'll be billing the irrigation accounts with the regular quarterly billing, so that will also have big results from the drought in the summer as well.
Just in John's bill, we're gonna make a fortune.
Thank you, I forgot about that,
That's
Leanne.
what I want.
Bes-
No, we-
Besides the irrigation piece, the other elements don't sway too much. So it is, you know, we can project, we have a pretty good handle on where we think it's gonna be at this point. We're projecting a very small surplus. Even though we came off of a very dry, warmer month season, at this point, and this is before the irrigation billing. So once we see the irrigation billings, this may change a little, but for now, a very small surplus. We had projected a deficit of about 313,000. So this increased revenue has really changed it. But since then, we've made some tweaks to the expenses in FY23, so that's offset some of those increases on the revenue side. But again, FY23 a small surplus. But as a result of what we looked at for 22 and 23 from the rate study to now, we gained, in essence, about $565,000 in extra funds that we're calling that, if there weren't additional expenses to offset it, would have an impact on rates. But we're going to talk about those expenses right now. So we did look, as part of this latest effort, and the capital plan piece was a big part of it. We spent a good deal of time amongst this group talking about the capital plan and making sure it was as accurate as possible. We definitely made some tweaks to it. We added things to it. We made sure that we were comfortable with the interest rate that we were using for projecting debt, because we were using an interest rate that we had carried for many years, and as everyone's probably aware, the interest rates have gone up recently. So we made sure we were more comfortable with an interest rate there, but once you put that in there, it increases your expenses. So we have some numbers here for you. I'll go through these quickly, but additional O&M for MWRA, we did increase that a little bit based on the latest assessment calculation that came down from MWRA. The debt one went down slightly. Additional debt tied to the capital plans, $145,000 total was added to the expense bottom line for that. Capital expenses went up $132,000. In total expenses, about $400,000 additional from the rate study that we had. So that's, if you compare the total expenses from the rate study to what we did very recently, that's an additional $400,000. That doesn't completely offset that extra funds that I talked about in the prior slide, but it's close. We also went with a little bit more of a conservative projection on the user charges revenue side, and that was enough to completely offset those extra funds I talked about. So in the end, we're basically back to that same exact rate plan that that was supported by the select board in the spring. Hasn't really changed. The graph has, because the most recent certification was strong, but we're still looking at some sizable expenses in the near future. So at this point, we're not ready to sway from that rate recommendation that the select board supported. But if we do end up doing work with the town in the spring, then we will look at this again and see if anything changes at that point. And Mr. Chairman, that's all we had for you this evening, so we can take any questions or comments.
Great. So, thank you for that report. So it sounds like the plan is working.
I agree.
Everything's going according to plan, right?
It's definitely going to plan. I think it's important to remember that the past few years that we had to pick up on the stormwater, and that's still within the water and sewer drain and stormwater. We have some major projects, the North Reservoir, which is millions of dollars. Now we're looking at the South Reservoir. These are items that, has been touched in over 150 years. It's a beautiful area up there, and, we're unfortunate that the staff here got into the point where we have to maintain that area, but those are big numbers that, are really affecting the budget, I think. We're buying that brand new vac truck, which is $600,000. That's part of the stormwater, but the savings over 8 years with that truck, we won't have to hire contracts, so we can do it in-house, so there's about $80,000 savings, once we get that vehicle. Even the trouble is we're not gonna get it for like 15 months because of supply problems, but I think the direction going in, we, as you know, we've done a lot of improvements in the water end. Now we're starting on the East Side High, doing all the II stuff. We're looking at looking at 2 more years, Jimmy, on the lead next, one more, maybe.
Yeah, like
That will
to
be done.
one, but I think it's gonna be two.
Yeah, we get that. We're looking at replacing all the hydrants in the future. Hopefully, we do have a couple water mains. Good example of that water main break we had recently on Washington and Nathaniel, and we had Washington and Harvard Street. That's something that Beth and I and Jimmy have looked at. Eventually, that's the 1700s, that water main.
Oh, it's, what, 1907?
1907, yeah. Old as John. But, we gotta replace John just like we replace water mains, so. Yeah, so.
One hell of a life.
I think, we're healthy. We always, and guys who've been here for a long time, Matt has always wanted to be over the 10%. By looking at what we're doing, we're keeping that. We're gonna have another healthy, it was a good summer, so we think revenue's gonna be up once we get the sprinklers in January, so.
No, it doesn't last long.
And we'll probably be coming, well, I won't be, but you'll be coming forward with some type of, we'll be working with Beth and the administration on if we could raise the water rate.
You can come back.
I bet they want me to come back with the water rate, yeah. So,
Yeah, so we don't need any action tonight.
Right.
This is really just a preview
Yeah.
for where we'll be, before Springtown meeting.
Any questions?
No.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you all for coming in, appreciate it, thanks.
thank you. Thank you.
Sorry to make you wait.
I think we have another.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, then we'll go right into the, I know you're here for 2, huh?
Yeah.
Double header.
We'll go right into the ARPA funding request. So this is a project we funded out of
Thank you very much. Thank you.
ARPA, the South Reservoir Irrigation System, and I hear there's, you have some additional information for us, right? So.
Yeah, this is a system that we had Weston Sampson look at. As you know, we've had, and I'll let Jimmy talk about why we're doing it, the manganese problem that we have during certain times of the year. It's usually in the spring and fall when the water temperature changes. And we talk a little bit why we're doing it, Jimmy.
What's happening, what's bringing it to light, is actually is people with home filters, and they're white. And manganese gets out into the system, and it gets into these houses, and it stains these filters brown, black. It's helped bring awareness, actually, to the fact that it's out there. So now, for 2 years, almost 2 years, we've been doing samples at a couple of households and at the reservoir. We can see the elevation of the manganese levels at the reservoir. That is the source. You need to attack the manganese at the source. So originally,
I just want to back up for a second. So the source of the manganese is the reservoir itself, right?
yes, manganese occurs in wells, surface water.
Yeah.
It's a very common thing. But when it gets out in the system, and you've got people with their home filters, and they're white, it comes into the house, not good, doesn't look good.
But that's what the filter is made for, to get all low
The
particles.
filter's
Yeah.
doing what it's supposed to do, it's
Right.
grabbing everything, but the filters are getting so dirty so quick, they have to change them quick. So what Weston and Sampson wanted to do was install like a kind of a paddle mixer instead of the aeration. But they did some homework, they found out that that could actually freeze in the winter, in the ice. So they went back, revisited things, found out the best way to do it is aeration. You put the aeration pads on the bottom of the reservoir, around the screen house where the intake valve is to the raw water. It goes down, gets pumped up to the plant. The aeration pads will blow up bubbles that cause like a curtain, keep the manganese out. It's the best known system to keep manganese out of your source water going into the plant. That is what we need to do to keep it out of the water system. You gotta get it at the source, which is the South Reservoir.
So what this will do, it's instead of kind of like a paddle system they have on fans, this will be a bubble system. Believe it or not, looking at the manufacturer, it's about 1 billion bubbles a day. It'd be like a hot tub up there. I can't believe it, but it does work, and what that does, it gets where the water, it gets cold to warm, and it causes tuberculosis, and this will stop that, and it will stop going into the treatment plant, and it should resolve our issue. We had some residents have been having this problem, but we've been testing them where our levels come down.
Yeah, our levels basically stay below.
Yeah.
But every now and then they creep up over, and that's out in the system. Usually the levels within the plant and the raw are above. That's why you have to go after it right there.
So the issue is when during the warm weather, the
Cold.
stratification,
Yeah.
and then when it turns over,
Turnover.
that's what creates the manganese. So we usually have a peak in the fall.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's going down now.
Colder, warmer, it just flips.
Is this aeration system used in other?
Oh, yes.
Is it
Yeah.
used
Yeah.
everywhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that was part of the research that Weston Sampson did,
That's
but their
correct.
That's
initial
true.
recommendation was not ideal in a cold
Yeah.
weather climate, I think, which is why they went to
Yeah.
this.
Right.
And these chambers, instead of they'll be lower into the
So it's like a fish tank.
fish tank, exactly, exactly, yeah.
Does anyone around us use a system like this, or do you know anybody in Massachusetts?
Many places.
Many
in
places,
New
yeah,
England.
in New England.
That's
He didn't
why
give us-
Weston and Sampson talked to most people, and that's what they use.
Okay.
Yeah, so look, I believe another 100,000.
See, originally, that's why they went to the other system. They were trying to cut costs.
Cheaper, right, right.
But not as effective.
Does Weston and Sampson have experience in putting this in?
Yeah, they have, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
They've
They-
worked with other
I
communities.
think one in Peabody, yes.
I don't know if they did PV, but they've done other communities.
And this can be installed with water in the reservoir, that's.
Yeah, yeah, they'll put it in with
Just
divers.
slam in. They're gonna do a survey out there around the screenhouse, topographic survey, just to get the levels right.
How long does it last? Sorry.
What's that?
How long does the system last?
For many years, it's had, well over 10 to 15 years, no
Yeah, they
problem.
just go on the bottom and
Yeah.
you put the air through them and
Yeah.
those bubbles, I'm sure it'll.
And we have a pumping station where the intake valves, we have actually air pressure valves there, so we're gonna save money on that, so. So if you can give us 100,000, we'll move forward this summer.
Yeah.
That's all.
We already gave you 150,000, right?
Remember when,
Okay,
you
expensive.
guys remember when ARPA came out, it was all gonna be water projects, and then everyone got everything. So we're just looking for a small amount.
So we've already given you 150,
Yeah.
and you're asking for another 100, and that's gonna cover this?
It's gonna cover it. Promise I won't be back here again.
Got another month.
Can we call you back?
Any questions from any of the board members?
And my question is your question that we know that 250,000 will cover it, and it's not gonna be some sort of
so-
increasing
Right,
cost
so it
over.
includes design, construction, and construction administration. The construction is obviously an estimate.
We're,
Hope
you know,
there's
we're.
a contingency built in.
Yeah, we've been hopeful, this is a good example, buying vehicles, stuff that we were supposed to get in the spring, we just renewed and looked at pricing. All our equipment that we want in the spring, I haven't told you this, but we're gonna need more money, like 50,000 for the sweeper. It's outrageous, no one's
See, I told you
changing.
you'd be back within before you leave.
We're gonna have to go to bid with the project, right? So
What's
we're
that?
gonna have to bid the
Yeah,
project
well,
out.
so,
Yeah,
so we'll bid it in the spring? Is that the timeline, do you think they'll be
Yeah,
ready to bid
yeah,
it in the
and
spring?
we'll have it ready for the summer.
Well,
so.
no.
After
more.
January 6th. So.
Well, after January 6th, we'll know more, after we bid it.
So Jay, do we have the cost of the vac truck? Is that locked in for
Yeah,
600,000,
right.
or is that
So,
like we're gonna
yes.
find out in 18 months? Oh,
Well, yes, because it went up, as you know, and we just talked to the vendor, and I believe we have it down now, so.
We're
We're locked in, yeah. Outfit's out of Woburn, so we took care of it.
All right, so hearing nothing else on this, does someone want to make a motion?
Yes.
Yes, that's it.
I move we approve a request for $100,000 to the DPW to cover increased engineering and construction costs for the South Reservoir aeration
From ARPA.
from ARPA funds.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Congratulations,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
That's it. No.
That's it.
No more, don't
No
come
more,
back.
promise. Unless we need money next
One-
week.
yeah,
We
one
don't need
meeting
money
left.
next week, Beth?
One meeting left, Jamie.
One meeting
Did
left.
Pay your question.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
All right, we have one final agenda item, I believe, which is just the Civico Waterfield lot. So it was brought to our attention. There was a request from council for Civico to extend the due diligence period. Everything's been going very well up there. I personally talked to representatives from Civico on, I think it was Thursday of last week. But they seem to be moving along. They're actually going to be before this board within the next couple of meetings, presenting their plans for the project, which are pretty much in line with what they came and had in the original proposal, which is great to hear. But they need to do a phase 2 environmental part of their due diligence, and they ran into some delays with their drilling contractor. So they've resolved those, but they're going to need a little bit of additional time to do that. So I was thinking we could give them a 60-day extension on the due diligence period. I think that's de minimis, and it's really not going to affect anything. Like I said, in the meantime, they've continued to move forward. They've gone ahead and basically created plans that they'll be before this board to present as part of the LDA. So I don't think we're going to lose any time on this. It's just they need this extra piece in order just to finish their due diligence. So any issues with that?
Did you say 60? I thought it was 90 days.
They want 90, but I think I think that was before they resolved the issues with the drilling contractor. So I think we can certainly give them 60 as a starting point and see, hopefully, I think they're confident they can get it done by then, but if not, we can also, have to extend again if we have to. But it's all positive news, which is great to see coming out of the Waterfield Lot project. So we should be happy with that, and they'll be here either next meeting or the meeting after that. Any issues with this?
No, and at this point, in the due diligence phase, it's really in their best interest to move forward as fast as possible. So,
Right.
there's less risk for us there because they need to.
Yeah, and they mentioned that they've been moving forward even with this delay. They've had productive meetings with the MWRA. They have had productive meetings with the MBTA. Their plans are almost finalized to be able to at least present to us an initial set. So this is just the last piece that they just need a little extra time on. So they've been, to their credit, this hasn't stopped them from moving. It's just the last piece that they really feel they need to get done. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it always seems hard to get a contractor anytime between Thanksgiving and New Year anyway, right? So, yeah, that's like,
So, yeah. All right. So if there's a motion to, and I think our council had drafted up just some changes that was available to everybody in the packet. So I think the motion would be to accept, the changes that our council had made to their request, including 60-day period rather than 90.
And authorize the town manager to sign the document.
I move we approve the changes from town council to the land development agreement with extending the due diligence period by 60 days versus 90 as drafted, and to authorize the town manager to sign the agreement.
So I think we should just mention
Substantial
it's the first amendment to the LDA.
Okay, so to amend, we amend the first, I move we accept town council's first amendment to the LDA and extend the due diligence period by 60 days.
Yeah, I think it would be something that, like the motion would be, we authorize the town manager to execute a first amendment to the LDA as presented in substantially the same form as town council for 60-day extension.
I move we authorize the town manager.
I don't know if I can make that motion. Can you read it back, Patty? Is that?
Really?
Sounded good to me, so moved.
so, yeah, you can just say so moved.
Yeah.
So moved.
There we go, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great.
So I don't have another half hour in me. We gotta.
You sure? I got a couple more presentations for you. All right. It's not that late. It's only 9:30. Anybody left in the room have anything to say? We've cleared the room. No, you sure? All right. With that, I think we've concluded our agenda, so a motion to adjourn. We'll meet back here on Wednesday at 6 for a kind of lengthy session, but a really important session, so looking forward to it.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. Thank you, WinCam. Have a great night.